The Indianapolis Colts have already begun the search for their next defensive coordinator, and interview requests have started to come out. So, who are the likely candidates, and who do we want to see as the Colts' next DC? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Indianapolis Colts on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Well, we used to be part of the Fans First Sports Network. Now we are part of Media Minute Network. So love them. Glad to be a part of Media Minute. But my name is Andrew Moore, joined here as always by my partner in crime, co-host of the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast, Drake Wally. And Drake, the Colts aren't wasting any time getting after their defensive coordinator search. Two names have already come out for interview requests, two pretty big names that we'll talk about here tonight. And it's going to be interesting to see. Really, we'll dive into these candidates, but I think what's more important or really interesting to see is the type of candidates that they're going to request to interview. Is it going to follow the same mold that we've seen over the past 8 years of defensive schemes, or are we going to look for candidates, or the Colts are going to look for candidates, I should say, that have a more aggressive approach to the defense? Because as we've seen lately, the Colts defense has been pretty poor, not only player execution, but from a schematic standpoint as well.
Yeah, and disclaimer, camera's been a real pain. So if it cuts out, I might have to go to my laptop camera and I might have to get a solution over the weekend, people. So really appreciate everybody joining tonight. So, yeah, I mean, you're coming off of Gus Bradley, man. After 3 years, you saw mundane, and we're not going to, there were some good, right? They forced turnovers, right? There were some good things that did come from Gus Bradley's scheme. But more often than not, it was just unreliable. It was dated. It was easy to exploit. And you had guys that were either rookies or just bad teams or backups that could easily dissect this defense. So I would hope that they're a little more on the side of aggressive, maybe a high-end defensive coordinator. Not saying that at one point Bradley wasn't, but I think when they acquired him, he was a little bit on the opposite end of his prime as that defensive mind. So we're going to talk about some of these guys. We even give a dark horse, and then of course they've already done some interviews, or they're going to schedule some interviews, or will do them in the upcoming week. So the Colts are already at work, man. They're not taking this lightly.
Yeah, exactly. So tonight we're going to talk about the defensive coordinator candidates. Two of them have already been named, but we're going to talk about some others that we think are very interesting, pros, cons, and what we think. Drake already mentioned we'll give a dark horse candidate. We've got plenty of news and rumors around the Colts to talk about as well. And we really thank you all for joining us here at 6 p.m. Eastern, a little bit earlier than we normally do. Yes. But I know most of you guys are going to be watching the college football playoff tonight, so join us early so that way we can all enjoy the game. And you don't have to be going back and forth or even miss us. So appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Getting it started off hot with Hustle Man Jones and his $2 super chat. Hustle Man, thank you so much for all of your support. Good to see you, man. And Hustle Man, he asked, why are we interviewing anyone on the Bengals staff? Is the question I have. A lot of Colts fans were wondering that, but Hustle Man, I hopefully I can convince you because I'm a huge fan of Lou Anarumo. I think he would be a home run hire for the Indianapolis Colts. And again, I don't think one bad season, and I don't even, it certainly towards the end of the season, the Bengals defense was much, much better. But we'll dive into that and really talk about why what our thoughts are on Lou Anarumo, who is one of the candidates for the Colts. Sean Contright is in the chat as well. Good to see you, my friend. And if you guys haven't done so already, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts _SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Make sure you hit that bell, turn on the notifications. You never want to miss us. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So be sure to subscribe. Give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So Drake, let's dive on into it, man. Breaking down the Colts defensive coordinator candidates. We're going to dive into 5 tonight. 5 defensive coordinators, and then we'll give a quick dark horse pick at the end. But let's start with the one that Hustle Man Jones was talking about, Lou Anarumo, Drake. That the request came out today. Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. We all know that he's pretty close with Ed Dodd, so it's not not a surprise that he was the one to get this scoop, but he did report that the Colts sent out interview requests to Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator or former defensive coordinator of the Cincinnati Bengals, as well as Steve Wilks, the former 49ers defensive coordinator, Panthers interim head coach. We'll talk about Wilks here in a bit. But Drake, for Lou Anarumo, I'll just give you some background real quick. Obviously spent the last 5 years as the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. Before that, he was a defensive backs coach with the New York Giants for a year. And then even before that, he was a defensive backs coach for the Miami Dolphins from 2012 to 2017. So a lot of experience on the defensive side of the ball for Lou Anarumo, particularly with defensive backs, which, you could argue is one of the lacking positions for the Indianapolis Colts. So it would be interesting to see his influence there. But when, I guess I'll ask you this, when that name came out today, Drake, what was your first thoughts when you heard that the Colts were sending out a request for Lou Anarumo? And honestly, were you surprised that they were wanting to interview Anarumo and he was one of their first interview requests?
No, I wasn't really that surprised. I mean, they need to get as many names interviewed as possible. I think that, when they were looking for the head coach, they did not leave any freaking stone unturned. In fact, at one point we were thinking, are they taking too long here? we thought maybe they were taking their sweet time too much. So I think that, you're getting a guy who, yes, there's been some turbulence with that Bengals defense, but I mean, Trey Hendrickson, I believe, led the NFL in sacks. I know that he's a star, but that's also a defensive line that outside of him really isn't packing the heat when it comes to, bringing pressure to the quarterback, I guess. So it's like, I do think that at times you can look at Anarumo's defense and say, okay, how are we getting something different than Bradley here? A guy that's, been around the NFL, well-respected, very, very much heralded across the league, as a professional, just like us, Bradley. Why are they going back to another guy who has experience and might be a little bit stubborn, right? Well, I think that he brings something different. I think that he brings a different philosophy. He's gonna just bring different things to this position than Gus Bradley did. And if for nothing else, the product he's going to put on the field. I know that might not be that exciting, but with some of the wild card candidates, you don't know what they're going to do yet. Guys that aren't or haven't had much defensive coordinator experience, or a guy like Jim Leonard with none in the NFL as a defensive coordinator, he could be a candidate. And while he might be a home run, he might not be, because you don't know what his track record is. So there is comfortability, there is comfortability in knowing, the resume of who you're hiring, and especially someone that's got as much experience as Lou does.
Yeah, and I do agree with you there, Drake, that the Anarumo does have a lot of experience as a defensive coordinator. But in terms of their schemes, I mean, Lou Anarumo's scheme would be a big change up for the Indianapolis Colts because Lou Anarumo's, we all know Gus Bradley's scheme. It's fairly based on the cover three. They run a lot of zone. It's from the Legion of Boom days where that made it, where Bradley's defense became famous. But it's very simple. They don't do a lot of disguising. They don't blitz very often, and you kind of know what you're going to get. Lou Anarumo is a lot different in that regard. His scheme is actually very complex, and it's multiple. It's not a scheme that is going to be the same game after game after game. And I honestly, in my opinion, when I'm looking at coaches, whether offensive, defensive, whoever, and this is why I was such a big fan of Shane Steichens when the Colts were looking for a head coach, is because I love coaches, especially in football, that aren't coaches that stick to their scheme, or it's their scheme or nobody. I love guys that are chameleons, that really change things up depending on the opponent. That was something that was so enticing about Shane Steichen, not only just his history of developing quarterbacks like with Jalen Hurts and his ability to help an offense there in terms of dynamic run schemes, But Shane Steichen, one of his core principles is that the game plan could change from game to game. He details the game plan to try to exploit the weaknesses of the opponent. Lou Anarumo is the same there. It can change week to week based on the opponent. So you could see one week where the Colts or where the Bengals would play a lot of zone coverage. It could be one week where you see the Bengals blitz a lot. You could see where against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs when the Bengals were going on that run to the Super Bowl. When the Bengals played the Chiefs, one of the biggest storylines to come out of that game was that Lou Anarumo and the Cincinnati Bengals only rushed 3 guys at Patrick Mahomes for most of that game. And Mahomes and the Chiefs offense really, really struggled. So Lou Anarumo is known for being a master game planner, and he can make very quick adjustments. One of the big knocks on Gus Bradley, he took way too long to adjust. Sometimes it would be a half before he would adjust. Lou Anarumo, it's not uncommon for him to adjust drive by drive in the past. So it's certainly a very different style of defense. And Lou Anarumo is not afraid to mix it up and switch up his coverages, switch up his scheme. It would be I think a really big breath of fresh air, just in terms of complete 180 of how the defense operates and how this defense tries to stop opposing offenses that the Colts really haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah, and I love the biggest thing that you mentioned about Anarumo, and that is, that is adjustments. Now, what I was basically mentioning is the profile. You've got an experienced defensive coach that is set in his ways of what he does and brings to the table, and he's coming off of a couple turbulent years. That fits exactly what Gus Bradley was as far as a profile. And so it's like, I think that's why a lot of fans were looking at this like, why are we even wasting our time? But going into the depth of it and with context added, I mean, yes, you're getting somebody who is going to probably, I don't want to say this about Gus Bradley, but it might not take much for a defensive coordinator hire to get better, get more out of the talent of the guys, right? I'm not saying that Gus Bradley couldn't bring that out of them, but like they missed tackles like crazy under Gus Bradley. They let up constant third and longs, under Gus Bradley. I just don't think you're going to get that with Lou Anarumo. And I do think that you do have some talented pieces he can utilize on this defense. You have DeForest Buckner, you have Kwity Paye, you have Leao Tulatu. He's getting himself a very young, talented pass rusher that has a ceiling that's really, really high. So I think that that's enticing for a guy potentially like Lou Anarumo. He could use Leao Tulatu in several different ways, and he could probably maximize the linebacking core. Imagine a guy like Jalen Carlies in Lou Anarumo's scheme. That's awesome to think about. So it's like, I think that this is a guy that could, really at least level up the floor of this defense. I just think Gus Bradley really got exposed too often. I don't think you're going to see that as often with Lou Anarumo.
Hustle Man Jones, thank you again for the super chat, brother. Really do appreciate it. How many Pro Bowlers has Lou produced? That's a great question, and I do not have that number off the top of my head. I think obviously on the Bengals defense right now, you're looking at Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks. Kind of what you were alluding to, Drake, that he's helped Trey Hendrickson, I think, reach his potential there in Cincinnati. And it's if you guys remember when we were talking about Leao Latu pre-draft, my comp for Leao Latu was Trey Hendrickson. So that's that would be enticing right there. Obviously, Jesse Bates, who is no longer with the Bengals, he was a solid Pro Bowler there. So I think those are the two off the top of my head. Don't know if there's any more than that, but certainly there's been some high end talent on the Bengals defense since he was been there. So great question, Hustle Man Jones. Really, really appreciate all of your support. Now, Drake, there have been questions though about Lou Anarumo because the Bengals defense had a down year. I've got the numbers right here. And it's kind of crazy because how how quickly the NFL can move. Last year, Lou Anarumo was actually a finalist or 2 years ago, excuse me, was a finalist for the Arizona Cardinals head coaching job with Jonathan Gannon.
Yeah.
And then now people are acting like, the Colts should stay away from this guy as the defensive coordinator. Here's the raw numbers. So last year, the Bengals were 25th in total defense, 21st versus the pass, 19th versus the run, and 25th in points allowed. Not very good when you look at the yardage numbers there. However, they were tied for 7th in the NFL in takeaways right there with the Indianapolis Colts, and they were 8th in interceptions. So they did take the football away. And over when the Bengals were really starting to turn things around, Drake, in that 5-game winning streak to end the season, the Bengals were actually 5th in points allowed during that 5-game winning streak. So that defense really, really turned it around. So a lot of people are asking, why are we considering this guy when the Bengals defense was awful? I mean, they were awful for 1 year, but if 1 year is the case, there's a lot of times where there's some people have off years. And I also think it's well known that Bengals defense really lacked talent. Obviously Justin Gates isn't there. DJ Reader was gone. There's not a lot of talent outside of Trey Hendrickson on that Bengals defense. So again, that plays a role into this. Now, counter argument that multiple people came at me on X for today. Well, the Colts don't have any talent on the defense side of the ball, so why is it going to be any different? I mean, yeah, they do have some guys, obviously DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Grover Stewart, all of those guys, I would say, Pro Bowl level players. Zaire Franklin made the Pro Bowl, whatever you have to say about him, but he did make the make the Pro Bowl. My difference is that, or what I have to say is, so, whether you like it or not, Lou Anarumo is one of the top defensive coordinator candidates out there.
Oh yeah.
Would you rather a guy that isn't a top head defensive coordinator candidate come in if you think that this Colts team is so void of talent? I mean, you would want to have a top defensive coordinator, because if you don't get a top defensive coordinator and you're lacking in talent, then it's going to be even worse than what you would imagine. So getting Lou Anarumo in here, if the Colts do decide to hire him, would not be a magic fix. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not implying that at all. As you can see in my huge article, what the Colts need to do, influx of talent all around the roster, including on defense. It needs a lot of talent on the defensive side. But I would rather have a top defensive coordinator to start. It's all a part of the equation. You want a top defensive coordinator and you want an influx of talent. But if you're missing one or the other and you just get a lot of talent and then you don't have a very good defensive coordinator, what's that talent going to do? It's just going to waste away. Same thing with if you get a top defensive coordinator and don't have a lot of talent. Going to waste away a good defensive coordinator. It all has to come together. So you got to have to put pieces of the puzzle. There's no one magic fix for this, Drake. And I think fans really need to recognize that. You still want to get the best defensive coordinator you can out there, but it's not going to be a one fix. You still need to have the influx of talent. We just haven't gotten to that point in the offseason for that to even be a possibility.
Yeah, and I think that what you also have to consider is that, this team still does have some young guys on the defense, right? I mean, I understand that you have DeForest Buckner, and he's a veteran. So is Kenny Moore. So is a guy like, honestly, EJ Speed. I know he's going into a free agency year, but I mean, he's almost 30. Zaire Franklin's been on the team long enough now. You can consider him definitely a veteran. They've got guys like Leatu Latu. They've got guys like Juju Brents. They've got guys like Jalen Jones. They've got Nick Cross. Jalen Carwise, man. I mean, they've got young guys that I do think that well, there goes my camera. I do think that I believe that it would be something that they can essentially just kind of.
And it looks like we lost Drake there as he's trying to get his camera fixed. But to just kind of maybe put a bow on the well, here's Drake back. So go ahead and finish your thought, and then we'll put a bow on the Lou Anarumo conversation.
Yeah, no, look, I think that he's going to bring out the most of some of these guys. I think that there's youngsters on the squad that could benefit from a veteran defensive coordinator, but a guy who's going to have a different approach, right? I know that he's kind of got a rough couple of years that he's coming off of, but man, he wouldn't be that bad of a hire. You can hire worse defensive coordinators than Lou Anarumo. I can promise you that. So I just think that it's a name that Colts fans are looking at and they're going, well, he's been in the league a long time. And look, I love a modern approach. I would personally take a young coach that, is kind of trying to, cut his teeth in the NFL a little bit, if you will. But again, Lou Anarumo, so that'd be a solid hire. I mean, come on.
Well, and the thing is too, Drake, I understand wanting a new approach, but there's only so many things you can do. And it doesn't mean a guy that's, young is going to be good. It doesn't mean they're going to come in and just have a wild defensive concept that nobody's ever thought before. I think, you're getting a guy that's multiple in his scheme. That's really the best that you can ask for a defensive coordinator. Another good, interesting point by Stats Matt. Lou is a secondary centric head coach or defensive coordinator. Somewhere we need some coaching for sure. So there could be a boost to the secondary to have Lou Anarumo and a coaching staff there as well. So we'll see. Definitely only one of the candidates for the Colts. There's a long way to go, including the next guy. We mentioned him earlier, Steve Wilks. Steve Wilks was the other candidate that the Colts have sent a interview request out there for. Steve Wilks is the former defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. He was there last season when the 49ers made their run to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. He was the Carolina Panthers interim head coach in 2022, and then also served as the Browns defensive coordinator in 2019 and the Cardinals head coach in 2018. Similar to Lou Anarumo, long history of being a defensive backs coach. He spent time with the Panthers, the Chargers, the Bears, and numerous colleges as their defensive backs coach. So again, it seems like at least with these first two interview requests that the Indianapolis Colts have made, they're looking, it seems like, into more secondary centric defensive coordinators. Maybe they're thinking that is where the talent is lacking the most, and that's what's needed against because the pass defense of the Indianapolis Colts was not very good. And then Steve Wilks, I think last season he was a volunteer advisor for Missouri, if I remember correctly. But when you look at Steve Wilks, big difference in the way that Gus Bradley the way Gus Bradley used his defense than Steve Wilks. Now, Steve Wilks did run that almost like a cover three Gus Bradley scheme with the San Francisco 49ers in 2023. But Kyle Shanahan has been known to use that for some time, going all the way back to Robert Saleh, when Saleh was the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. In 2023, while the San Francisco 49ers ranked fourth in points per game, with Steve Wilks as the defensive coordinator, their run defense really struggled, especially in that playoff run. So that's something to keep in mind, because the Colts' run defense was also an area that really struggled as well. But the biggest difference between Gus Bradley and Steve Wilks, when he's running his own system, typically likes to run a lot of disguise heavy coverages. It's not just going to be simple enough to see what exactly the defense is in with Steve Wilks. You're going to have to be on your P's and Q's, likes to do a lot of disguising, a lot of stuff pre-snap to throw you off there, and it's a very high blitz rate. Steve Wilks defenses typically have one of the higher blitz rates in the NFL. Hasn't always led to success, though. I know a lot of Colts fans have been talking about recently that, the changes should be because the Colts didn't blitz much under Bradley, and it was more just sit back into zone, that it needs to be a complete 180. And really, it's all man-to-man, blitz heavy. Again, be careful what you wish for, because I am not sure that this Indianapolis Colts defense, as currently constructed, would necessarily would necessarily be a good option for that, especially if it's a lot of man-to-man. I do think that they should run more man-to-man at times, but when you look at the cornerbacks out there, typically cornerbacks, when you're running a lot of man-to-man, you got to have faster cornerbacks. You have to have guys like, Jalen Jones, not a very fast cornerback. Juju Brent's not a very fast cornerback either. So when you're talking about that, you would probably have to have really an overhaul of the secondary if you're wanting this team to move forward into a strict man-to-man defense. So Drake, I was just kind of talking about Steve Wilkes' background, how his defenses are typically, they like to they run disguise heavy coverages, high blitz rate, but he does have a past of using Gus Bradley's scheme. He did it in San Francisco. So what are your thoughts on Steve Wilkes and his potential to be the next coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts?
I think that it's also a candidate that, I posted this out on X. I think that it's a candidate that is realistic for them to hire. And also, thank you guys for hanging out during these camera issues. They have been hellacious. The next time it's going to just have to go back on the laptop. I'm going to be a little grainy, but we're going to get through it. But yeah, man, it's another name that people are going to look at. They're going to say, well, he lasted 1 year here and 1 year here and 1 year here. And sometimes that happens in the NFL. Steve Wilkes is another guy that is very, very much respected in the league. Okay. And he did have a tumultuous year head coaching in Arizona. He also had Josh Rosen as a quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's just, I think that disguises, though, boy, that's something that's really, really excellent, because, you're getting into the age of the NFL where these quarterbacks are so freaking smart, man. You need to disguise your coverage. You need to disguise it at times where you can hopefully get them to make a mistake or misread something and force turnovers. Now, I know that Gus Bradley's defense did force turnovers, but a lot of times it was because the quarterbacks were just throwing all game long, mostly because, you can underneath the coverage of Gus Bradley. So I think that, when you throw, as much as some of the quarterbacks did, you are going to throw some interceptions. But I think that disguises would be great for the Colts defense. That's something we haven't seen as much of, I think, in the past 3 years with Bradley as we'd like to.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think Bradley has done it a little bit more recently than when he first came in as the Colts DC, and even his previous stops before that. I do think that's kind of why I'm so high on someone like a Lou Anarumo too, because you're going to be multiple. You got to keep opposing offenses guessing. The Colts have just become way too predictable on the defensive side of the ball. And when you're that predictable, it puts so much pressure on the execution as well. Because if the offense really knows what you're going to do, then there's no, I don't. I'm not going to act like this is a huge thing, but I think it does have an impact. That's an element of surprise. I do think there's an element of surprise. It certainly doesn't. I don't think opposing offensive coordinators are struggling to prepare for the Indianapolis Colts defensive scheme over the past 3 years. They know what's coming and they know how to beat it. All they have to do is go out there and execute it. For the Colts, everyone knows what's coming as well. So that just puts extra pressure on them to go out there and execute. And I think because you don't have the talent level and of some other defenses, and there's not necessarily much star power out there besides DeForest Buckner and Kenny Moore, it makes it really difficult for these teams to go out there and have success over and over and over again, especially against the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Even the not top quarterbacks, Drake. We saw it multiple times this year, multiple times the past 3 years, where quarterbacks would have career days against Gus Bradley's defense. So I think Steve Wilkes is if we're saying like who is pushing for who, Lou Anarumo, I would think would be a Shane Steichen pick because of he's a chameleon, because he has that experience. He was a head coaching candidate just a little bit ago. And while Steve Wilkes has served as a head coach, Steve Wilkes and what he has run in the past, that seems more like the Ballard choice. if I would had to say. So he's familiar with Chris Ballard. So if you're saying like one or the other, Steichen would probably be Lou would probably be Steichen's choice. Wilkes would probably be Ballard's choice if I had to pick. But so it's going to be interesting, Drake, because those are the only two confirmed interview requests that we know of for the Indianapolis Colts. Gus Bradley's only been fired or parted ways with for 3 days now. And I would expect multiple other interview requests to come in even within maybe starting tomorrow even. But as of right now, those are the two confirmed. So I guess of the two confirmed, we'll ask you. Well, before we do that, before I ask this question, we've got a super sticker from the one.
Oh, man, the legend.
Danielle Moore. Thank you so much for all of your support. And it's from Baby Jackson. Baby Jackson using daddy's money to support daddy. Love to see it. But thank you so much. Yeah, for all your support. Hey, he was it's for helping change all of those diapers where let's listen. My wife changes the majority of the diapers in this household, but I certainly maybe I get the award for most times like tossing my son up in the air playfully or something like that. But thank you for all your support. And we got another one. Hustle Man Jones, $10 super chat support for Drake's and his new camera. Appreciate the hell out of you, Hustle Man Jones. Get us through these dark times where Drake's camera just decides to go AWOL. But hey, we've all had technology issues. That's what happens when you.
It's a nice camera, dude. It is.
Yeah,
and it's
honestly,
like, what the hell's happening?
Drake's got probably an external camera. I'm using the camera on my MacBook right now. So sometimes that's. And here we go. AR5 Drake's camera fund. We need that Colts content. Here we go, guys. Send it all in. Where's Patrick, the CFO, when you need him?
I'm going to get a camera that's going to make me freaking 4D, people. You guys are going to...
Listen, you'll get to see literally every pore on Drake's face if all of this comes together. But Drake, and thank you, AR5, for all of your support as well. So Drake, out of these two guys, real quick, who is your favorite just out of these two? Anarumo or Wilkes? Who would you rather see as the defensive coordinator for the Colts next season?
Man, I'd rather have Anarumo. I would. I mean, look, I think that he was a head coach candidate, right? Not even that long ago. And I do think that when you look at the Bengals' talent, right? Trey Hendrickson had like 17.5 sacks, and then the next guy had 5. Okay. I mean, it was a big drop off. That's without question the most talented player. I think that, there is a little bit more talent potentially for the Colts defense that he could work with. And plus you've got the draft coming up. He's going to have a say in those players that get drafted because they need to nail this hire, man. You can't have a dud here at defensive coordinator. You can't be constantly having to have Anthony Richardson climb you back into games. You need to support this dude on the other side of the football as well. So, and when you get leads, you don't want to let him up, right? You don't want to just have the same thing for 4 quarters where a quarterback, you've seen it. The first half, sometimes it went well. And then the second half, these offenses would just climb right back and they'd eat up all these big plays. So I think that Anarumo would be a good hire. Is it the most exciting? Is it the sexiest? No, but it's reliable. He's well respected. He's got the kind of scheme that would be different. It'd be a nice breath of fresh air, like Andrew said. We'll see, but that's the one I would take between the two.
Yeah, Drake. And honestly, outside of Bob Saleh, I would probably say Lou Anarumo would be my favorite defensive coordinator of the candidates out there right now. Stats Matt says Lou. AR5 says Lou. Hustle Man Jones, the only one that's going with Wilkes. I'd rather have Wilkes. I don't want Shane coaching bad because he's worried Lou's going to take his job. And I saw that talked about on X today. And I really, guys, I don't think that the Colts are looking for a guy on as a defensive coordinator that could replace Shane Steichen in the middle of the season. I really don't. If that's the case, and that's the thing too. Shane Steichen is the one that's interviewing these guys. And Shane Steichen is ultimately going to have the say of who is on his staff. I know a lot of people said that Steichen was forced to keep Bradley. That's not the case. Shane Steichen wanted to keep Gus Bradley. So I don't think
Yeah.
the Colts are looking for a guy that could potentially replace Shane Steichen. If that's the case, then they should fire Shane Steichen and start a head coaching search. So, but
Exactly.
Drake, let's talk about some guys that haven't been requested yet. But I honestly, I might be a little surprised if they aren't requested to interview. And let's start with another former head coach, Saints former head coach Dennis Allen was the head coach for the past 3 seasons for the Saints. Obviously, was fired mid-season, but before that, before he took over when Sean Payton retired for that one season, he was the defensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints from 2015 to 2021. Also served as the defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos in 2011. And honestly, Drake, it's been I think people, because Dennis Allen hasn't been a coordinator in a while, and because of how it ended in New Orleans, people can kind of forget how great of a defensive coordinator Dennis Allen was for years in New Orleans. And his defense is routinely ranked at the top or close to the top of the league.
Yes.
And sacks and takeaways, getting after the quarterback and getting the football back to give to Drew Brees and that offense. I think a lot of people really do forget that. And so it's interesting to kind of see the discourse about Dennis Allen, because it seems like you either really like Dennis Allen or you really hate Dennis Allen from what I have seen online. So Drake, what are your thoughts on the former head coach of the New Orleans Saints and him potentially being a candidate for the DC job here in Indy?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I love it. I love the idea of Dennis Allen being the defensive coordinator because of what you said. He would consistently put the Saints defense in contention, like one of the best. Top 10 is a rank I'm sure Dennis Allen heard a lot of as the defensive coordinator of these Saints. I mean, some of these guys that they have on the team, the one that sticks out to me the most is Demario Douglas. Okay. I mean, Cam Jordan, they had guys like Marshawn Lattimore. I mean, dude, they had some absolute studs on those defenses. And you also have to consider, yes, his head coaching tenure sucked. I mean, they just did. Even when he was the then Oakland Raiders, right? Not good. He just didn't do a very good job filling in for Sean Payton. I don't think anybody wants to try to fill those kind of shoes. Guy just goes over to Denver. Now Bo Nix is in the playoffs. I mean, that's so difficult to replace a guy that can do that, right? So I just think that you need to put the head coach, put that behind you. Look at his defensive coordinator work. That's my favorite hire. That's my absolute favorite hire. I think that you get a nice blend of experience, but he can adjust to modern NFL offenses. I think that he's got the right kind of mindset. I think that he's seen and done it all as a coach. I mean, he's even had his own team on 2 separate occasions now. Okay, so and the defenses they've shined at times, So I think that you've got that sounds like a great hire to me.
So. Dennis Allen is something that I have seen, out of Dennis Allen and looking at his defenses of the past, very disciplined defense. Guys always seem to be in the right spot, which is a sign of a very well coached team. You can think about multiple times where guys were not in the right spot on defense for the Colts this season, or guys getting out of the right gap and it leading to a huge play. I think that would, there's a good chance that would change with Dennis Allen. He's a very well respected. Players really like to play for Dennis Allen, and like I said, it just seems like they're very disciplined. They know how to attack the defense. Now, definitely would be a scheme difference for Dennis Allen, or for the Indianapolis Colts, I should say, with Dennis Allen. He really isn't from that Tampa 2 scheme tree that we've seen with Matt Eberflus. Not really a Seattle cover 3 tree that from Bradley, and both those trees are really the defensive trees, the defensive scheme that Chris Ballard likes. But again, it goes back to his defenses are multiple at times. I think you could see them doing a 4-3 front at times. Other times they'll switch to a tight front. You can run a 3-4. And so he, again, is one of those guys that is multiple with his schemes, which I typically like out of defensive coordinators in today's NFL. No longer is it, simply run a base 3-4 and just kind of go at it. Offenses are so much more sophisticated in today's game that you have to be multiple with your schemes, and you have to be a chameleon to match up with the various offenses in the NFL. And something that could be enticing to the Indianapolis Colts too, Drake, is because he does have head coaching experience. And here's why.
Yeah.
You put him in that position, you really don't have to worry about him kind of running his own defense. I don't think you would have to worry about that with Lou Anarumo, with Steve Wilks, with Dennis Allen, because those guys have run their own defenses for so long. And with Shane Steichen, let's face it, much of his focus is on the offensive side of the ball.
As it should be.
He's probably looking for a defensive coordinator that he doesn't have to micromanage. He doesn't have to continue looking over their shoulder and kind of checking up on the defense. It's kind of, he wants a defensive coordinator that'll take care of the entire defense, and he'll just let him do his thing. Obviously, Shane Steichen has input with it. I'm not just saying like he's not going to talk to the defensive coordinator all year and they don't work together, but the majority of the responsibility and the majority of that, that ownership of the defense would fall on the defensive coordinator. So that's why, you could see, it's more likely to see a guy like a Lou Anarumo, a Steve Wilks, a Dennis Allen, than potentially a Jim Leonard, which I know you're very high on, Drake, just because the past experience of running a defense, and Shane Steichen wouldn't have to, he knows the defense would be in good hands with one of those guys at the helm, and it's not something that he would have to worry about that he has to add extra attention to and take away from what he's trying to do on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, yeah, look, the less Steichen has to worry about anything other than offense, the better. Okay, like he needs to focus on the offense and amplifying Anthony Richardson's year 3. That's what Steichen's main focus needs to be. So I think that a guy like Dennis Allen, man, basically this is from a search, right? Allen's defense makes extensive use of players filling a variety of roles instead of showing a bunch of different formations. He thrives on moving players' responsibilities around without necessarily changing the picture of what the defense looks like. Okay, that translates very simply to maximizing the talent and the strengths, chameleon of sorts. Okay, a guy who will adjust. Some of these guys, they might be experienced, but they adjust. Gus Bradley did not. That's just how it. That's the black, white, and gray of this whole thing. Gus Bradley doesn't adjust. Just because these other guys are experienced like Gus Bradley doesn't mean that they don't also adjust. So.
Right. And I do think that Dennis Allen is a much more aggressive defensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah.
Just like Lou Anarumo, than Gus Bradley, certainly. So if you're looking for, I think his teams would blitz on average, 20 to 25% of the time. So every fourth player. So you're probably looking at a blitz, which isn't, definitely not one of the top teams in the league, but certainly more than the Colts have done in the past. Now let's look at a couple of guys that would be first time coordinators, Drake. Let's start out with Chris Harris, the Titans pass game coordinator and cornerbacks coach. We talked about him on the show over the past couple of weeks or so, but he has been the pass game coordinator for the Titans for the past 2 seasons. Before that, he was the defensive backs coach for the Washington Commanders under Ron Rivera for 3 years. Excuse me. And he did interview. Hey man, eating dinner right before this. You never know what's going to happen on a live show. I apologize, fans and people listening for that. But he did interview for the defensive coordinator spot with the Indianapolis Colts back in 2022. So the Colts are familiar with him, certainly. And it's not just, Ballard that's familiar. It's not just Steichen that's familiar. Chris Harris, and this isn't the Chris Harris Jr. that played for the Broncos. This is Chris Harris, the safety, former player in the NFL.
Yeah.
But he's got experience with both of these guys because he played with the Bears when Ballard was there as a pro scout way back in the 2000s. And then he has coaching experience with Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen was working out there with the Los Angeles Chargers with Gus Bradley, by the way. Chris Harris was the assistant defensive backs coach out there in Los Angeles when all of them were together. So there's familiarity, not only with Ballard, but with Steichen, Drake, for Chris Harris, which is why I think he is a pretty popular name in terms of if the Colts were to go with first-time defensive coordinators, I think Chris Harris is probably at the top of the list.
Yeah, you look at his defense, right? You look at the cornerbacks, you look at the safeties. I mean, these guys, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11 interceptions, and 5 of them came from Amani Hooker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and yet this defense was top 3 or top 5. I don't have it in front of me in the league in passing yards allowed per game.
In passing yards allowed per game, the Tennessee Titans were second in the NFL, allowing only 177.3 passing yards per game. And in total defense in yards allowed per game, Drake, the Titans were also second, 311. In terms of rushing yards per game, the Titans were down the list a little bit. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor went kind of bananas against them late in the season, but in terms of where Chris Harris was having an impact, the Titans defense was rock solid this season.
Yeah, and you have to look deeper into his work to help that defense be rock solid, right? And I think that he'd be an awesome defensive coordinator just because he also has experience as a safety in the NFL. That is paramount. When you have that kind of experience in the NFL, it really does. It brings an interesting feel to a coaching job because you can relate to the players. You've been in a locker room before. You've seen a culture, maybe bad, maybe good. Hey, regardless, you're in a coaching role now. You're able to bestow that knowledge onto these players. Chris Harris is going to be a name that, without question, they better interview him. They have to interview him because I have a feeling he's going to be a defensive coordinator somewhere.
I'd be surprised if they didn't request to bring him in for an interview. And it's not just with the Titans, Drake, that he's had success. When he was with the Commanders there for those 3 seasons, the Commanders ranked 8th in pass defense and 4th in total defense while he was there.
Fantastic.
So the last, half decade or so, the last 6 years, 5-6 years, Chris Harris has been involved with some really, really good defenses. So, and again, he's got the experience with Ballard, has the experience with Steichen. He has experience in that Tampa 2 tree as well, both as a player, playing under Lovie Smith with the Bears, and as a coach, coaching with Ron Rivera with the Washington Commanders. So it probably wouldn't be a huge schematic overhaul for the Indianapolis Colts if Chris Harris does come to Indy. Now, not to say he's not going to bring his own wrinkles. He certainly will do that. And I would honestly be, a little excited to see what those wrinkles are. But I don't think it would be a complete 180 schematically from what the Colts have been accustomed to since around 2018 when Matt Eberflus was the first year defensive coordinator here in Indy. So but if you're looking for production and guys that have been a part of winning defenses in recent years, Chris Harris has been amongst some of the best defensive and the best secondary groups in the NFL over the past 5 years. So, and I'm sure he's had a pretty big impact on that.
Yeah, and again, I do think that the fact that he's played enough in the NFL. You've seen, I'm very impressed with what he was able to do with that Titans defense. And that shows you it wasn't the defense that was a problem with that organization. At least not this year, man. I mean, not on the field. I mean, they fought every team they played, every team. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of, on this show, I know there's like fans that like spat between, these teams, but we have a lot of respect for the Tennessee Titans players. Like, I mean, especially those defensive players, those guys really fight. So I think that Chris Harris is a big part of that. I think that he is an intriguing candidate. First time. So you're going to be kind of wondering what's he going to put on the field. But if nothing else, man, it's exciting because I do think that he could bring out the best in some of these players. He clearly did in Tennessee.
I'll tell you what, personality-wise, Chris Harris is definitely a raw guy. He brings energy.
Oh, yes.
So something that I think has been lacking ever since, number 53 had to sail off into the sunset from this Indianapolis Colts defense. But let's talk about Jim Leonhard, Drake, because it seems like he is one of your favorite young guys, at least maybe your favorite to take this job here for the Colts. Jim Leonhard, pass game coordinator and the defensive backs coach for the Denver Broncos, has only been there a season in that role. I think he was a consultant for Illinois in 2023, but he was the interim head coach at Wisconsin, Chris Ballard's alma mater, in 2022. And before that, he was the defensive coordinator and the defensive backs coach for the Indianapolis Colts, for the Wisconsin Badgers from 2017 to 2022. But Drake, what's interesting here, all of these candidates that we're talking about, I think outside of Dennis Allen, his roots are as a defensive line coach, but Lou Anarumo, Steve Wilkes, Chris Harris, Jim Leonard, if you're noticing a pattern here, all of those guys, their roots are in the defensive secondary, the secondary defensive backs coaches. And so I do think that it seems like that's where the Colts could be headed. It's a guy that has defensive back ties, because ultimately that's probably one of the areas that the Colts need the most help in. So it wouldn't surprise me if it comes from someone with that type of background. But back to Leonard, Drake, obviously this year he's really helped, I think, the Denver Broncos take a big step in their secondary. We all know about Patrick Surtain II, who, in my opinion, has a very good case for defensive player of the year. But you think about all those other young players on that Denver Broncos secondary, Drake, and while the Broncos are only 19th in the league in passing yards allowed per game, they're right up there in turnovers, tied for 8th in the NFL in interceptions. So Jim Leonard's group's known for taking the football away, and he's known for developing young talent there in the secondary, which the Colts certainly need. The Colts certainly need to have depth or improvement in that secondary, and they have one of the youngest secondaries, I think, in the NFL.
Yeah, and you're talking about guys that are kind of what's ahead? A guy like Juju Brents, a guy like Jalen Jones. Yes, he's been starting, but has he hit his ceiling? That's the big question. I know that he's a 7th rounder. I know that you've been. Based off of a 7th rounder, yes, he's a fantastic. He's gone far past his draft stock at this point. But has he hit his ceiling already? That's the biggest thing, because we saw him get cooked at times. Then we saw him against a struggling Bears defense have 2 turnovers in the same game. So what's going to be ahead for a guy like that? I just think a guy like Jim Leonard could really help those youngsters, man. I love what he's done with Denver. Okay, you got a guy like Riley Moss, who before he got hurt, he didn't play against the Colts, but he would have been I still think Josh Downs would have absolutely, had the advantage. But you're talking about a guy who's been able to maximize, again, like we talked about with Chris Harris and some of these other guys, just maximizes the talent of these defensive backs. And that's been a big question mark for the Colts. And they've had guys that are just up and down all season, like Jones, like Womack. Womack was turning the ball over at times, and then other times he's getting cooked deep by Cortland Sutton. So it's you're just kind of looking at this defensive backs group, like what's next for them. They have to play better. Okay, they just have to play better. The whole defensive unit needs to play better. But I think that Colts fans are ready to look at this defensive backs group and say, I know what I've got here, and I'm at least halfway confident in watching it. Right? It's never consistent with that group. So I think that Jim Leonard might bring a nice even flow to it with a new feel, because he's never done it before. He's never been a DC. At least not in the NFL.
Yeah, all very good points, Drake. Semper Colts fan, appreciate all of your support. And Semper Colts fan says, starting a chant for Mike Singletary. Just ask. I'm sorry, Semper Colts fan. I cannot support this. Mike Singletary, I don't even
he's not coming back.
I don't think he's even coached in the NFL since 2016 or something. I think
been a minute.
Stats Matt's going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time I think he was with the Rams as a defensive assistant. Back in 2016 was the last time he was in the NFL. And I know he hasn't even coached since 2020. So, hey, Semper Colts fan, go for it, buddy. If that's who you want, more power to you. But hey, I don't think that would be the best choice for the Indianapolis Colts, but I appreciate all of your support as always. But Drake, Jim Leonard, I think if you're looking for a guy that's going to be one of those young, new, fresh names, Jim Leonard fits that bill. And certainly wherever he has gone recently has had success, especially in the secondary. So definitely a name to watch for the Colts moving forward. So those are 5 guys that, probably expect. 2 of them have already gotten interview requests. 3 others, I would say it's not, you could probably expect or wouldn't be surprised if they got interview requests as well. But Drake, give me a dark horse candidate candidate for the Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator job that people might not be thinking of. And guys in the chat, if you want to put some dark horse candidates, put them in there as well. We'll highlight them.
I wanted to say because there was a certain guy from SI that I feel like was just a little bit bored and just kind of like named some of the guys that he thinks right off the top of his head could be the DC coordinator for the Colts. But I wanted to say Wink Martindale. I wanted to just because he has brought the pain as a defensive coordinator at times. And I just feel like that would be an interesting one. But give me Bob Saleh. I mean, if the Colts really want to take a massive swing, and if Robert Saleh is okay with coming to the place where his mentor Gus Bradley just got denied from, not fired, denied of a contract renewal, I think that would be the dark horse. I just think that he's probably going to go elsewhere, but that's my only dark horse because I think the Colts are going to go with somebody when they hire him. You're going to go, oh yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, Bob Saleh, I think maybe more of a pipe dream than a
that's fair.
A dark horse because if Bob Saleh is getting, Robert Saleh is getting head coaching interview requests, the 49ers I think have their eyes set on trying to bring him back, and I think that if he is a defense takes a defensive coordinator position, the 49ers would probably be his top choice. Wink Martindale interviewed for the Colts head coaching position back in 2023, so definitely the Colts have shown interest in Wink before. So that one I don't think is that far out there, Drake. Wouldn't surprise me if Wink gets another shot. If the Colts want to see if they want to bring, if he's interested in taking another DC opportunity in the NFL. Let's go to the chat because some people are being a menace, including my wife. Noah Jabber coming out here saying Jeff Saturday.
How dare you, Noah?
Just all the chaos. Let's get all of the chaos in here. You'd love to see it.
Lit a fire.
My wife says Peyton Manning. I mean, come on now. Peyton Manning is the defensive coordinator.
Get out of here.
Listen, that she probably liked that because I wouldn't have the Manning cast on every Monday night. She could watch something else on television. But hey, let's not. I don't know about that one. Richard Rhodes says Chris Hewitt, the DB coach and the assistant head coach in Baltimore, has been with the Ravens for over a decade. I like that one. That one is very interesting, and definitely a name that we haven't talked about. Stats Matt Aubrey Pleasant from the Rams is my dark horse. He's taken some no-name DBs and turned them into a respectable unit. Also a really good name and one to watch for the Colts. And then Randall says Robert Mathis. Listen, I don't think Robert Mathis has he doesn't seem like he has a desire to coach in the NFL. He's kind of happy doing his own thing with other pass rushers. And the Colts, he was already on the Colts staff as a defensive line coach. I don't think Robert Mathis is coming back as a coach for the Colts. So, but Drake, so it's going to be interesting over these next few weeks or so, as the Colts really narrow it down and look into some defensive coordinators. And I'm sure, I think the first one, at least that I know of, Lou Anarumo is going to be the first one. NFL Nerd says Chuck Pagano, love it. And AR5, let Cato June at it. I mean, Cato June was a part of this staff, and I don't know what's going on.
Assistant linebackers coach, guys.
I don't know what's going on, but Cato June posted something on X today that my wife says Brady Quinn. Oh my gosh. So let's get out of here.
What's next? Sam Howell. Sam Howell's next.
Yeah. There's Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman, not Sam.
Sam Hartman, not Sam Howell.
But yeah, exactly. So, but anyways, it's going to be interesting to see how this defensive coordinator search develops over the next few weeks. So, Drake, let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors here. Before we get out of here, obviously the talk, I can support this. Go Irish tonight. Going to beat down Penn State. We're going to watch future Colt Tyler Warren go up against future Colt Xavier Watts, but the Irish are going to get the victory tonight. Anyways, Colts fans were abuzz about what Jim Irsay had to say after the game, and I took some flack on X because I took maybe a position that, I mean, a lot of people didn't, but there were a lot of fans upset with how Jim Irsay addressed the team post-game on Sunday,
Right.
saying he was disappointed. He said he was disappointed with the season multiple times, but then he said, "We're 1-0 in 2025. We're happy and proud of how you guys came back to finish 8-9." And a lot of fans took exception with that, say that, that's not what it should have been said, and we're mad with what Jim Irsay said. Drake, I don't know about you, but I think some Colts fans need to take a chill pill. Not everything has to be down, depressing, especially after guys like DeForest Buckner, Michael Pittman Jr., who's playing through a broken back, Julian Blackmon, who's got a torn labrum where the muscle isn't even connected to the shoulder anymore. Those guys are out there really playing for nothing. It was a meaningless game. They were out there for 65 minutes, putting their bodies on the line. The last damn thing they want to hear is Jim Irsay come into the locker room, and no offense, Jim Irsay's health, not very good, come in there and talk down about them, about their performance. I'm sorry. There's a better place and a better time. And we know what Jim Irsay says. He shoots from the hip. He's always going to be an optimist. He's not thinking about, how this is going to be perceived. He just wants to go out there and show his players, hey, I support you guys. We didn't reach our goal, and it's disappointing. He said that multiple times. That fans seem to forget that. But he was disappointed. He said it multiple times, but he's trying to get a positive spin to end the year, and that's Jim Irsay. Jim Irsay is always going to be an optimist. If he went in there cussing and trying to tear down his team, that's something Woody Johnson would do. That's something David Tepper would do. You know what those guys are? The two worst owners in the NFL. So I don't want to hear it. I really don't. I mean, leave Jim Irsay alone. Yes, the Colts have to be better. Changes have to be made. But to go after the guy, to come in and talking to his team for 2 minutes, and instead of, saying something lighthearted, stuff that no one's really even going to care, or it's not going to matter, he should go in there and belittle his team. If that's the case, I guess you don't understand that the time and place was not that time. That's what exit interviews are for.
Yeah, number one, they won. Okay. Number two, this is a team that when you look at the guys that have been with this franchise for these years, like DeForest Buckner, like Kenny Moore, like Julian Blackmon, guys like, I know that he ruffled some feathers, but he did come back out and apologize to Colts fans, with Zaire Franklin. Guys like that just went out there and they won you the game when they had absolutely not a damn thing in the world to play for other than pride and possibly a job elsewhere. Okay. They went out there and won the game. Jim Irsay is not David Tepper. Okay. He's not going to go in there and he's not going to make these guys feel small. This is the last game before you start a very a very pivotal off season in your franchise's future. Okay, I'll tell you this, Colts fans, you'll miss Jim Irsay when he's not the owner. I know that you're lucky that I think that it's going to go right to his daughters because they're going to probably have a similar mindset as their father, but you're going to miss Jim Irsay when he's not here. Okay, like you don't want to belittle guys after they just went out there and fought to get you a victory when it meant nothing for their playoffs. It meant nothing for their hopes to go to the postseason, none of that. So I think that it meant a lot. And you saw in the face of Quentin Nelson, especially when Jim Irsay was saying those things, you saw the guy is still 100% bought into his owner. You can just see it. Jim Irsay has the respect of these players, people. Like he's been a great owner to these players. And I know that sometimes he can receive criticism and he deserves it at times, especially for Chris Ballard, just kind of trusting him right away. I digress, but I think that Jim Irsay did the right thing. What are you supposed to do? Go tell them you all suck. You guys are pathetic. You guys are absolutely ridiculous. You know who does that? An owner that throws a drink at a Jaguars fan named David Tepper. That's the kind of asshole that does that kind of stuff, not Jim Irsay.
It's what Bob Irsay would do. Someone that Jim Irsay learned
go out on the field and fire someone.
It's the person that Jim Irsay learned how not to act as an owner. His father would have done that. But Drake, you brought up a good point, kind of very good segue. Before we do that, Semper Colts fan, got to shout out. More support. Thank you so much. In the end, get somebody aggressive who can win. I think that's the hope. That's the hope for the next defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. And you hope that hopefully that they can do that and set out a wide search and get the right guy for the spot. So appreciate all of your support, Semper Colts fan. But Drake, you mentioned Zaire Franklin. He did bring it up this week. He received a lot of flack. Let's be honest, a lot of flack for how he handled
and he
things
should have.
things this year. Yes, both on and
Sure.
off the field. And so while Zaire Franklin was not made available for interviews or to the media when the Colts were cleaning out their lockers on Monday, he did come out, and I think it was 2 days ago on Tuesday, maybe. What's the date? Yeah, on Tuesday.
Yep.
And he did post a tweet saying, "Indy fans, listen, I made some mistakes. I let something get to me that let some things get to me that they shouldn't have, and didn't, and did some things I wish I could take back. But understand, my heart was always right, meaning it was always in the right place, and I'm going to learn and be better because of it." So, I don't know who exactly it was. Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, DeForest Buckner, combination of the three, other people on the roster. Someone sat Zaire Franklin down and talked with him, said, "You're a captain of this team for a reason. This can't go on any longer. The way you conducted yourself on the field, after games, throughout the week, on the podcast, it can't happen anymore. If you want to be a leader of this team, it needs to be different next year." And shout out to Zaire Franklin. I know a lot of Colts fans are still upset with him, but hey, he apologized. I don't know if he apologized for stuff that he thought he was wrong. And now, actions are going to speak louder than words. Obviously, you said it. Now go out there and show that you're changed, show that you're really just focusing on ball and not having all of these other distractions around that. Because yes, Zaire Franklin, numbers wise had a really good season, but there were also a lot of areas that Zaire Franklin can still improve on, and hopefully he can use that as motivation and come back and have 2025 be the best year that he's had. I think that's what Colts fans should really look at this situation.
Yeah, I mean, he still had 20 plus missed tackles. He had 173 on the year, which if you do the math, that's about one out of every 8.5 attempts. You're probably going to whiff a tackle. So he can absolutely get better at his tackling. But yeah, me and Andrew were saying he needs to turn the ball, or he needs to force more turnovers. He did that. He did that a lot. He had 5 forced fumbles and 2 picks. Okay, so Zaire Franklin showed out at times. I think that he just give him a break. Give him a break, Colts fans. I think that I think that we were hard on him until he actually apologized, and you didn't expect that, especially after he shook a non-existent Pat McAfee's hand. You were kind of like, wow, this guy's taking on the villain role in a full capacity, but he actually came out and apologized. And regardless if it was coaching staff or a guy like DeForest Buckner, who almost cryptically called him out, right? He almost cryptically called him out up at a press conference. It doesn't matter. You want the best Zaire Franklin out there. And if you have a Zaire Franklin that isn't focused on that kind of crap, and he's more focused on what he's doing on the field and what that locker room looks like, I think you're going to get an even better Zaire Franklin than what you've already gotten. And guess what? You got a Pro Bowler now in Zaire Franklin. So honestly, I'm kind of pumped to see what his 2025 looks like. I hope that he answers back with a vengeance.
Yeah, I think that Zaire Franklin is a solid player. Still has plenty of room to grow. But he definitely has his flaws, but he also makes some pretty damn good plays out there as well.
Sure does.
And then finally, one more thing, guys, that the Chris Ballard, his press conference was supposed to be end of season presser, I should say, was supposed to be earlier this week. He was under the weather. The Colts moved it. Chris Ballard will be delivering his end of season presser tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I think it's going to be, as always, it'll be live streamed on X from the Colts account, probably Colts.com. I'm not sure about the Colts YouTube or anything like that. Chris Ballard will probably be 15 minutes late like he normally is. But I can tell you this, guys. I do not expect the Indy media to give him a pass. The guys down there are going to grill him tomorrow, and he better come with some really good answers, not the same crap that he does every year, because if he does, it's gonna just light up the fan base one more time. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on that press conference. Yes. I'm very interested to see the type of answers he gives. And as always, like I do every year, I'm going to be looking for those little nuggets that Chris Ballard leaves every year that give a glimpse into what he's thinking, what the Colts are thinking, and what possible moves are going to be made in the offseason.
Please, please, for the love of God, people, analyze this. Analyze how he answers these questions, because there's been montages, beautiful ones, absolute artistic type work that have been put out on X of just how his end of season pressers have gone every year. And you usually get something like, "I screwed up. We like our guys. We're close." He can't do that this time. You have absolute ballers like Stephen Holder, like Nate Atkins, like Joel A. Erickson, like Jake Arthur, that are like James Boyd. Okay, they're going to make Ballard answer questions. Okay, they've already been asking the players questions. They got Michael Pittman to reveal that he was playing with a fractured back. You don't think that they're going to press Chris Ballard if he gives some BS answer? He's going to have to be at his best. I jokingly told everyone, some of the guys that write for the channel, I said that he said he was under the weather because he wanted to duck the media so that he could prepare some answers because he knows they're coming. But it's a joke. I mean, it's totally a joke. But that's going to be something that he's going to have to address. And this is a pivotal year for him and Richardson and Steichen, but especially Ballard. And if for no other reason, it's even though there's been a reset since Steichen and Richardson became a thing, he's been here since 2017, man. Like, this has to be a big year. Playoffs or bust. And if there's no playoffs, God knows what happens after that.
It'll be fun to see that press conference tomorrow and what he has to say. So, guys, before we wrap up the episode, I do have an announcement to make, a personal announcement. As you guys, I mean, you guys have stuck with us through thick and thin. This will be my last episode on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. I really, this is my last week, not with Horseshoe Huddle or with Indianapolis Colts on SI. I'm just taking a major step back in that regard because a lot of people don't know what all goes into this. And it's, while this isn't Drake and I's full-time job, it takes full-time hours, so doing this for quite a while. And hey guys, I've got a 8-month-old son now, and really want to spend more time with him. So I'm taking a major step back. I am taking a more of a senior analyst emeritus role with Indianapolis Colts on SI. I'll still be writing here and there on some of the bigger issues, and you guys can still see Drake and I doing a show every week on Bleacher Report. We're still going to do the Bleacher Report show every Wednesday night in the off season, 6 p.m. Eastern. So hey, go while you're wiping up your tears. I'm kidding. You're actually probably cheering that I'm leaving. Please be sure go. I know some people are some people that I blocked on this chat over the years. But guys, I do appreciate it. I appreciate all the love. I can see all the love in the chat as well. You guys are fantastic. I'm not leaving because of you. You guys have kept me here for probably a little bit longer, actually, than because I've been kind of wrestling with this idea for a long time. But appreciate the hell out of you. Appreciate the hell out of the community that we've built, and I don't want to lose that either. So that's why I'm saying, hey, come over to the Bleacher Report. But it just the amount of time it takes, I just can't do it anymore. So maybe in the future we'll see. But right now my priorities have changed. And I want to spend more time with my family, want to spend more time with my son, want to spend more time with my wife. And to do that, just got to take a step back. So I appreciate the hell out of every single one of you. I know I say it all the time. It's Patrick, the CFO. Cheers to you, my brother. I appreciate the hell out of you. Cheers to Stats, Matt, everyone else. And here I go rambling again. So, but guys, really love you all. Appreciate all the fun times. And you'll see me on here too, because guess who my replacement is? The one, the only Noah Jaber. So Noah Jaber is going to be taking over my spot here on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. You guys saw him when he filled in for me when I was on paternity leave. Drake and Noah, no doubts at all that you guys are going to absolutely mother effing kill it. Continue to kill it. And Drake, love you like a brother, man. No, you know this, and it's been a joy. And we're going to continue to kill it on Colts content on Bleacher Report. I'll still make guest appearances here and there, but love you guys. It's been a fun run, and it's not going away. Just taking a step back. You'll still get to see all of my takes on X, coming on here and talking Bleacher Report, going on long 12-minute rants as Drake just sits there, and I'm taking over the show, unfortunately. But as I'm doing right now, oh, Patrick, you absolute menace. But yeah, appreciate the hell out of every single one of you. Something I've been really grappling with for a few months. Just have to make this decision, and it's not goodbye. Again, just taking a step back. you want to talk Colts, DM me, come on Bleacher Report when I'm on here, shout out, say hi, miss y'all, love y'all. And it's going to be a lot of, it's definitely a big change, but happy with my decision. And hey, priorities change. Colts will always be here. Some other things won't. So, but again, appreciate you guys, appreciate the community that we've built together, and you guys are all rock stars. So signing off for the final time. AR5. I don't have Patrick money, but cheers, big dog. Appreciate the hell out of you. Enjoy the family time. All you guys in the chat. Fan effing tastic. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. Drake, I love you, buddy. And guys, just because I'm leaving, you still have to subscribe. Go subscribe. Go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow at Colts_SI on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell. Turn on the notifications. You never want to miss Drake and Noah moving forward. And have Drake shave his beard for you to stay.
You want me to look like I'm 10?
Listen, I would never shave this. Then I'll look like Mr. Clean or even worse, Dan Dockich. But please, if it's my last show, I can say what I want. But hey, catch us live. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, wherever you listen, and give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate all of your support. I will be doing guest appearances, guys. I'll come back here.
He's on anytime he freaking wants to be.
So, yeah. Drake, like I said, I love you, brother. Tell the people what they need to go check out on horseshoehuddle.com so we can go watch some college football.
Instead of that, I'm just going to say this. Andrew Moore, absolute legend. There's always stuff on horseshoehuddle.com. There's always stuff on Indianapolis Colts on SI. This man is an absolute baller, and the fact that he made a decision for his family, for his son, brings a tear to my eye. This guy has balls, and I absolutely love him. Everyone give a hand to Andrew Moore. He's got my heart, and he should have yours. You guys are the best, and this guy's the best.
Well, hey, I appreciate it. And guys, it definitely wasn't an easy decision. My wife, in fact, was telling me, "Are you sure?" She did not push me to this at all. But right. I want to spend more time with the family, guys. And sometimes you just got to make those decisions. And like I said, I'll be around. Don't worry about that. So, guys, one last time, appreciate the hell out of every single one of your community. Fantastic. Colts fans know it's tough right now, certainly, but there'll be better times ahead. I believe in the future of the Indianapolis Colts. Might not be immediate, but the Indianapolis Colts will be good again. So, but hey, Patrick, one more time, buddy. You absolute menace. So, hey, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of your offseason. Like I said, reach out to me anytime. So long, Colts fans. We'll be seeing you soon.